Right now, Arsenal Football Club is at the centre of one of the most complex and fascinating transfer windows in recent memory. This is not a club simply buying one player and moving on. This is a club actively reshaping its squad after reaching a Champions League final, winning the Premier League, and now setting its sights firmly on European glory next season. The pieces are moving fast, the names are big, and the decisions being made right now will define whether Arsenal take that final step or fall short again. Let us get straight into it, because there is a lot to break down. The Julian Alvarez situation, Image 1 Fabrizio Romano, one of the most reliable names in transfer journalism, broke a significant statement from Julian Alvarez himself. And I want you to hear this clearly because the player did not whisper this behind closed doors. He said it publicly. His words were, and I am reading this directly so nothing is missed, "I do not want to hide or act like I do not want to be clear. I try to be honest. I spoke to Atletico people and I think the best for everyone involved is for me to leave. I want to fulfill my dream." Now let us pause on that for a moment because that is an extraordinary public statement from a player at a club. He is not just hinting. He is not leaking through agents. He is speaking directly, openly, and with complete clarity. He wants out. He believes leaving is best for everyone, and he has a dream he wants to fulfill. That dream, based on everything surrounding this situation, points clearly toward Barcelona, and that sets up the next piece of the puzzle perfectly. Atletico Madrid respond, Image 2. Now here is where things get serious, because Atletico Madrid are not a club that rolls over. They never have been. And their response to Barcelona's interest in Alvarez was as direct as a statement can get. The club told Spanish outlet Diario AS, and again I want to read this clearly, there is no amount of money for which Barca can buy Julian Alvarez. He will not be transferred to Barcelona. Either they pay the release clause for €500 million, or there is no deal. €500 million. Let that number sit with you. That is not a negotiating figure, that is a wall, a very expensive wall. Atletico Madrid are essentially saying to Barcelona, you are not getting this player, not at any realistic price. Not through negotiation, not through clever financial structuring. The only way through that door is the full release clause, and nobody is paying €500 million for a single player right now. So, what does this tell us as analysts? It tells us that Atletico Madrid have drawn a line specifically against Barcelona. They do not want Alvarez going to a direct Spanish rival. That is pride. That is politics. That is the way Diego Simeone's club operates. But here is the key insight. If Atletico are willing to block Barcelona at all costs, they may still be open to selling elsewhere. And that is where Arsenal enter this story. Arsenal already tried and were told no by the player. Image 3. This is a part of the story that many Arsenal fans may not have heard fully yet, because it is not just about what clubs are offering, it is about what the player himself wants. According to Mirror football journalist Ryan Taylor, Arsenal have already pushed hard to sign Julian Alvarez this summer, and they were not ignored, they were not left waiting, they received a direct response from the players' camp. That response was essentially, thank you but no. The player is desperate to join Barcelona, and at the time of that response, he was not willing to consider rival offers. Now let us think about what that actually means. Arsenal made a serious approach. They were told the player wants Barcelona, and a move to PSG was also ruled out. A return to England, which would include Arsenal, was described as something Alvarez was not keen on, so the situation as it stood was this. The player wants Barcelona. Barcelona cannot meet Atletico's demands. And Arsenal, despite genuine interest, were rejected at the player level. This is a complicated triangle, and it gets even more interesting in Image 4. Atletico Madrid offer Arsenal a swap deal, Image 4. Here is where the story turns, because despite everything we just covered, there is now a reported swap deal on the table. And this is significant. According to the Spanish outlet La Macope, Atletico Madrid have ruled out selling Alvarez to Barcelona as a matter of honor. That phrase, matter of honor, is important. It tells you this is not just business for them, it is personal. Selling to Barca is simply not something they are willing to do. But selling to Arsenal? That is a different conversation entirely. The reported deal would involve Alvarez joining Arsenal in exchange for somewhere between £40 million and £60 million, plus Viktor Gyökeres as part of the package. Now I want to be clear about something. This is reported information. This is a rumour at this stage. There is no confirmed deal. There is no agreement between the clubs. But the fact that this structure is being discussed publicly tells us something important. It tells us that Atletico Madrid are exploring alternatives to simply keeping a player who has publicly said he wants to leave. And Arsenal happen to be one of those alternatives. The question remains whether Alvarez himself would accept this destination. Earlier information suggests he was not keen on returning to England. But transfer situations evolve. Players change their minds. circumstances shift. If Barcelona truly cannot make this happen, and all the evidence points to that being the case, then perhaps Alvarez will have to reconsider his options. This is not resolved, this is still very much in motion. Morgan Rogers, Arsenal's #1 target, image 5. Let us shift now to the player Arsenal are most firmly focused on right now. And that player is Morgan Rogers, currently at Aston Villa. Fabrizio Romano has been direct and consistent on this. Rogers is the #1, #2 and #3 target for Arsenal this summer. That is how Romano described it. He is seen as the top target. Arsenal have made very good progress on the player's side. Conversations are happening. The deal, according to Romano, is absolutely on. Now that is strong language from someone who does not use strong language without reason. When Fabrizio Romano says a deal is on and that Arsenal will go all in, that carries real weight in the transfer world. However, and this is important, Romano also noted that the club-to-club side of this deal still has a long way to go. Aston Villa will not sell cheaply. The conversations between the clubs are still at an early stage. There will be a gap between what Arsenal offer and what Villa want, and that gap needs to be bridged. Separate reporting indicates that Villa will not sell for less than £100 million. That is a significant fee for a player who, while highly regarded, has not yet played at the very top of European football. But Arsenal clearly believe the quality is there, and when a club identifies someone as their top target across every category, you know the intent is serious. What is also interesting here is Romano's comment on Bradley Barcola, because while Barcola is admired by Arsenal and does remain on their shortlist, Romano was clear that Rogers is the priority. Barcola is nothing imminent for Arsenal. Rogers is the focus. That distinction matters. If you are watching this and you want deeper analysis on stories like this, where we break down every layer of what is really happening behind the transfer headlines, then hit that subscribe button right now. Arsenal Daily Talk exists to give you the full picture, not just the headlines. Subscribe and join the conversation. Crysencio Summerville, concrete interest from Arsenal, image 6. Now here is a name that perhaps sits slightly under the radar in this window, but should not be overlooked. Crysencio Summerville, the 24-year-old Dutch winger currently at West Ham United. According to journalist David from D Talking Arsenal, checks were made on Somerville, and what came back was clear. Arsenal hold concrete interest in this player. Conversations between Arsenal Football Club and the player's agent have already taken place. That is not vague interest. That is not admiration from a distance. That is direct contact. Now it remains unclear whether Arsenal plan to escalate this interest into a formal bid. That part has not yet been confirmed. But what is clear is that Somerville is on Arsenal's radar, and Arsenal are among the top clubs competing for his signature this summer. As an analyst, what this tells me is that Arsenal are not relying on one deal at the wide attacking position. They are building options. Rogers is the priority. But having concrete interest in Somerville as well suggests Arsenal are aware that the Rogers deal may take time, and they want to have alternatives ready. This is smart transfer business. Identify your top target, pursue them hard, but keep other options warm in case negotiations stall. A high-profile sale is coming. Image 7. This is perhaps the piece of news that will be most uncomfortable for Arsenal supporters. But it is important and it needs to be discussed honestly. According to journalist Sami Mokbel, at least one high-profile departure from Arsenal should be expected this summer. His reasoning is straightforward. Arsenal spent heavily last season. There is now a focus on outgoings. And while no one is claiming Arsenal need to sell, Mokbel's view is that it would be prudent to do so. His exact words were, "The best-run clubs sell their assets at the right time, and there is definitely an understanding of that at Arsenal. They need to be more proactive in at least listening to offers for their players." Now that is a measured and credible observation. Every elite club, every truly well-run operation manages its squad actively. They do not simply accumulate players and hope for the best. They identify value, they maximize it, and they reinvest wisely. The name that has been whispered in connection with a potential departure is Martin Ødegaard. This is still at the whisper stage. It is not confirmed, it is not a done deal, but the fact that it is being discussed at this level by credible journalists means Arsenal at least need to be prepared for the possibility that their captain could attract significant interest. And if Ødegaard were to leave, the reinvestment from that sale would fundamentally change what Arsenal can do in this window. That is the kind of strategic decision that changes the whole shape of a summer. I am not saying it will happen. The sources do not confirm it will happen. But the intelligence gathering and the logic behind it is real. David Raya, World Cup, Golden Glove, Premier League title, image 8. Let us take a moment to acknowledge what Arsenal's goalkeeper said publicly, because it tells us something about the mood inside this squad. David Raya spoke about being at his second World Cup with Spain and described it as a dream. He reflected on his club season with pride, noting that he won his third Golden Glove and the Premier League title with Arsenal. Now I want to highlight that because it matters in the context of everything else we are discussing. This is a goalkeeper who is playing at a World Cup, fresh off a Premier League winning season, and who is visibly proud of what he has achieved in Arsenal colours. The culture inside Arsenal right now is not one of uncertainty or transition, it is a culture of winning. Players want to be there, players are proud to be there. And that is an important foundation when you are trying to attract top talent in the transfer window. When Alvarez or Rodgers or any other target looks at Arsenal, they are not looking at a project. They are looking at a team that just won the Premier League and reached a Champions League final. That matters enormously in transfer negotiations. Dario Osorio, the next Alexis Sanchez, Image 9. The final transfer piece worth discussing involves a younger, less high-profile name. But the framing around him is anything but low-key. Christian Kjær, the technical director at FC Midtjylland, confirmed publicly that Arsenal have been looking into Dario Osorio, a 22-year-old Chilean player, and his description of Osorio was striking. He called him someone with the full package, and described him as the next Alexis Sanchez in Chile. The next Alexis Sanchez. That is a comparison that carries serious weight, especially for Arsenal supporters who remember what Sanchez brought to this club. Now I want to be careful here because looking into a player is not the same as making an offer. Arsenal are monitoring this situation. They are gathering information. Other Premier League clubs are also interested according to the same source, so this is not an imminent deal, this is a name on a list. But the fact that Arsenal are scouting a young Chilean winger who is being compared to one of the club's most dynamic forwards of recent years tells us something about the ambition and the vision behind their recruitment strategy. They are not just looking at established names, they are identifying talent early, before the market inflates the price beyond reach. Sol Campbell's Champions League prediction, main article. Now let us bring everything together with some broader context, because former Arsenal defender Sol Campbell provided a perspective that ties all of this transfer activity to something larger. Campbell, speaking on Sky Sports, said that Arsenal have the squad to reach another Champions League final next season. He said they have already proven they can get there, they have the core, they have the belief, and if they add one or two quality players while keeping the group together, he believes they will be in and around the semi-finals and final again. His words were grounded in logic rather than blind optimism. He acknowledged that nothing in the Champions League is guaranteed from one season to the next, but he pointed to the quality of the existing squad as the foundation of his belief. And that is the most important point of all. Arsenal reached a Champions League final. They came within a penalty shootout of winning their first European Cup. They lost on spot kicks against Paris Saint-Germain, with Eberechi Eze and Gabriel Magalhaes missing from 12 yards. It was heartbreaking. But the experience of getting there, of competing at that level, of going the distance across Europe, that does not disappear overnight. Campbell specifically mentioned the togetherness of the squad, the management of rotation across multiple competitions, and the belief that the Champions League is the prize they most want. He said clearly that the Champions League is the one they sorely missed. So when you look at everything happening in this transfer window, the pursuit of Rodgers, the Alvarez situation, the interest in Somerville, the scouting of Osorio, it is not random activity. Every piece of it is pointed at one objective. Arsenal want to go back to that final, and this time win it. Morgan Rodgers, full picture. The separate reporting on Morgan Rodgers reinforces everything we already covered from the Romano information in Image 5. Rodgers is Arsenal's top priority. The player side of the deal has seen good progress. Aston Villa will not sell for below £100 million, and the club-to-club talks are still at an early stage. What is also interesting from Romano's broader comments is the context around Bradley Barcola. Romano noted that Barcola remains on Liverpool's radar and is also appreciated by Arsenal. But the expectation is clear. Arsenal will go all in for Rodgers. Barcola is on the shortlist but is not imminent for Arsenal. This matters because it tells us Arsenal have made a clear decision. Rather than chasing multiple attacking targets simultaneously and potentially missing all of them, they have identified Rodgers as the man they want most, and they are pursuing him with real focus and intent. Rodgers is currently with England at the World Cup in the United States. A strong showing there could only increase Villa's asking price. That is the reality of modern football. Performance on the biggest stages raises market value. Arsenal will be aware of that dynamic and may be motivated to move sooner rather than later. So where does all of this leave us as we stand today, June 23rd, 2026? Arsenal are pursuing multiple targets across different positions and price points. Morgan Rodgers is the clear number one objective, but talks are still developing at club level. The Alvarez situation is complicated by the player's own preference for Barcelona and Atletico's willingness to sell to Arsenal, but not to Spanish rivals. A swap deal involving Gyökeres has been floated but remains unconfirmed rumour territory. Somerville offers a potentially more straightforward option at wide positions. Osorio is a long-term scouting prospect rather than an immediate signing. and at least one significant sale from the current squad appears likely, with Ødegaard's name in the background as a possible departure. The vision behind all of this activity is consistent with what Sol Campbell described. Arsenal are not rebuilding, they are not starting over, they are refining. They are adding to a group that already reached a Champions League final and won the Premier League, and they are doing it with purpose, with focus, and with a clear destination in mind. That destination is Budapest, or wherever the final is held next season, and everything happening right now is designed to get them back there, and this time, bring the trophy home. This has been Arsenal Daily Talk. If you made it this far, make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss our next breakdown. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Which signing do you think Arsenal need most right now? Let us know below.